very passionate about this plant. I feel that we do need to be growing it. And the ancient history is quite phenomenal. I'll start off. The bond between hemp and mankind is truly an ancient one. We've used this plant to feed, clothe, stimulate, heal, hang on, there's one, and provide as a means of survival. For 10,000 years. Surely this plant, after 10,000 years of service to mankind, deserves a trusted place in our lives. This plant originated on the steppes of Central Asia. And archaeology puts first evidence of hemp cultivation in 8000 BC in Taiwan and central Turkey, where the fibre and cord was found in funeral shrouds and funeral pieces, examples of first woven fabric. The Vikings and the medieval Germanic tribes depended on rope and sails for their food. The women used hemp or pain of childbirth. The Vikings and all these tribes also carried their seeds to the New World as a means of survival, not only for themselves but for others, and often sowed as they went. In 6000 BC, hemp oil and seed was used throughout the Persian and Chinese continents, where it was said to be the plant that only benefited mankind. And between 4 and 3000 BC, it became a plant of the masses. So it provided fibre, cloth, food, and it was known in that time that a lord would grow hemp around his castle to ensure his military strength. Apparently, bowstrings made from hemp were far superior to those made of traditional bamboo and would often decide a battle. In 2300 BC, hemp was used as medicine. This was documented by the Chinese emperor at the time, Shen Nung, and he prescribed the female hemp plant for constipation, beriberi, rheumatism, malaria, and menstrual problems. Used with aconite at this time, it was known to be an excellent anaesthetic during surgeries. It was also known as its safety as a medicine, being totally benign to both the human and the animal systems. The Chinese culture also held it in high regard with their art, and this comes in the form, most beautiful, of lacquerware. Lacquerware was a process of art of melting tree sap, a particular type of tree, heating it and thickening it, and laying it over a core of hemp fibre. Hemp fibre. 1000 BC saw the Aryan race invade India, and with it they brought their seeds of hemp. They called this hemp bang. The countries of Bengal and Bangladesh are named after this very plant. It was said to be synonymous with Shiva, and it became an integral part, or was an integral part, of the Hindu religion. The Vedas, the ancient texts, talk about it as a sacred plant and ask us to deliver us from calamity and protect against diseases. So apart from having spiritual purposes on this continent, warriors would drink the tea to calm their nerves before battle, and it was used to kill a wide range of ills, as documented in both the Ayurvedic system of Indian medicine and the Arabic Tipi system, both of which still exist today. Starting around 800 BC, some nice little pictures to look at, is this amazing place called the Ellora Caves in Maharashtra in India. It was started by Krishna I, and it was his answer to building a place of religious acceptance and tolerance by a collection of Buddhist, Hindu and Jain temples. These 34 temples were carved out of the, chiseled out of the rock, the volcanic rock, but on the surface of them, to make the beautiful sculptures, was modelled a plaster made from hemp, clay and lime, probably the first hempcrete. And this allowed a fine finish on all its sculptures and beautiful ornaments within the temple grounds. They are now a World Heritage listed site. It is known that this hempcrete had insulating qualities and great strength. It was fire resistant and it absorbed 90% of airborne sound, making it a perfect for a peaceful living environment for monks. These works of art are now 15,000 years old. They're free from insect damage, natural conditions and decay. Hemp paper started around about 200 BC in the Han period. Picture of pulp up here. It was found that mixing pulp with hemp bark, with mulberry bark, was inexpensive and made a nearly weightless writing surface. Paper was born. It was tough, pliable, fine and waterproof, so it became the popular and preferred material for official documents, books and calligraphy. This continued right through to the 1800s, so we were still making paper all during that time, this way with hemp. 544, it was documented in the essential arts of the people in China, the sciences of best practices of cultivating hemp. This text mentions both crop rotation to purify between your grain crops, purify your soil, and also the potash fertiliser, which was the idea of once your hemp harvest, the fields were left with the stubble, you would burn the stubble, leave the ash lying on the field, the rains would wash the ash in, and fertilising the soil for the next crop. These two things are both used today extensively in farming. Also, it is known at that time that hemp seed was the best famine food. It provided thousands with a protein-rich gruel that could be made just basically with a quick-growing crop and was the answer to great problems. Sorry, it's the hemp seed. Sorry, I'll just click back to that one because this is a basically every man, little hamlets grew their own hemp at that stage. It was a plant used oft. In ancient Egypt, hemp fibre was mainly made into rope. In fact, it was used in the construction of the pyramids, not only for pulling the blocks, but also they had an ingenious way of splitting the rocks. In the quarries, they would pound the dried herb into the cracks in the rock. They would then wet it, and the process of the fibre swelling between the rocks would break the rocks apart. This was also, Russia became also a rope empire many hundreds of years later, and using serf labour, they could afford a slow and careful processing of their hemp fibre. They were known worldwide for their water-wretched hemp fibre, which was a process of holding the hemp underwater so it rotted slightly and was easily prepared. And it said they made superior quality rope, the Russians, and it was said only a desperate and foolhardy sailor would leave port without his water-wretched Russian rigging. And there should be a boat picture, this one. And as this picture shows, this one would probably carry about 60 tonnes of hemp rope and yards of sail. So you can see how much hemp was used to power all navies. In fact, all navies in the world needed sails and rigging, and they were all made from hemp. Colonists to new countries were also required to grow hemp by law. Founding fathers of the US, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, were hemp farmers themselves. Thomas Jefferson documented in his daily journals of the farm that hemp is abundantly productive and will grow forever on the same spot. But the breaking and beating of it by hand, always done by hand, is slow and very laborious. So in 1815, you can see them here, he modified a slight threshing machine to what he called a hemp brake, which was a machine that pounded the fibre with a wooden mallet, basically. The Kentucky hemp fields were America's answer to supplying their tons of fibre needed throughout this time, both rope from the Navy and cord, but it was still a very laborious, hand-done process. Around about this time were the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution, which started to change everything. The first decorticator, this is a picture up here of the fields and the hemp being processed in the fields, back-breaking work. And then the stacks, as they would traditionally be harvested, stacked, and dew-retted in the fields so the rain could do the initial process and then they could be stripped easily of the fibre and cord. In 1980, the first decorticator was made in Germany, and it was a fibre machine for breaking hemp stalk and releasing the fibre from it. And in 1919, George Shipton made improvements to this machine. Sorry, let's go back to that one. And he made one that would separate the fibre and herd and produce very fine hemp for many uses. And this machine could have revolutionised the industry at that stage. This was in 1919, but it was not to be. In 1950 and 1930 to 1937, so all that time, the US Pharmacopoeia stated that hemp was used for more than 100 illnesses and diseases and was used regularly by many. Another amazing fact, in 1917, the Model T Ford was built. This was run on hemp oil. Henry Ford was a visionary of his time, and he had a secret biomass conversion plant in Utah, in Iron Mountain in Michigan. And he was creating there already charcoal fuel, creosote, ethyl acetate and methanol, which are all the building blocks for the plastics we use today. He was making this from hemp and other organic fibres. He believed it was the new way of the world. And in 1941, in 1941, he created and put onto the market the hemp and soybean car. And in this picture you can see him hitting it with a sledgehammer to test its impact strength. It was known to be 10 times stronger than steel. Imagine how many lives that could save nowadays. These cars were built to last a lifetime, one car for a lifetime, leaving no carbon footprint. He said, Mr. Henry Ford, why use the forests that take centuries to grow, or mines that take ages to lay down, when we can get the equivalent from forest and mineral products from an annual growth of hemp fields? And in 1937, Popular Mechanics put out an article, and it referred to hemp and its harvesting and processing, and its idea for the new machinery that was about to be built, the patents that were being put out, and it referred to it as the future billion-dollar crop. But this all was to change. And I'd like to pass it over to Dave now to tell you how it does change.